Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Pastor's Chat. It's Tuesday, February 2nd, Groundhog Day. I'm sitting in a region here in Franklin Lakes, which got, 25 inches of snow, which is amazing to me. But it was a kind of a friendly snow once the storm stopped. It's light. So I'm coming to you today in my getting rid of snow gear. And I don't even really know how I look. I've had a hat on and a coat and have been working to clear sidewalks and whatever's necessary. So I feel a sneeze coming on. I turned my mic off so I wouldn't sneeze in your ear, but it didn't come. So, Epiphany, season of discovery, season of inviting discovery, and sometimes it is a rediscovery of what we've learned before and then forgot. Epiphany is about light shining, appearing to us for awarenesses of things, something that in a vibrant life is happening all the time. All the time. Lifelong learning, right? What a mistake it was to set up our talk about education as if, you go to school and then you're educated, as if educated is something in the past. You're being educated. We are learning lifelong. Even my dad at 94 years old is still learning things. He'll say, I didn't know that. When in the world did we ever get the idea that, he is an educated person or she is an educated person? I remember so many quotes, my grandfather and grandmother, things they said. I hope only that I remember them the way they said them and not what I transformed them to be. But when my great-grandmother died, she died at, I think, 101. And her obituary talked about how life had changed while she was living, how flight had come into existence, and cars, and the telephone, and how all those changes happened in her lifetime. And I don't know, I remember that we were at the funeral home, and I said to somewhere near my grandfather, 103 or 102. Wow, she must have learned a lot of things in her life. And then my grandfather looked at me and said, it's not how long you live, it's how wide open your eyes are. It's how wide open your eyes are. The writers of the gospel would agree. They had remembered Jesus often saying that what he was saying was for those who have ears to hear, for those who have eyes to see, meaning that this kind of seeing, this kind of epiphany seeing is what we welcome in the journey of faith. And again, I'll say it, I'll repeat myself, the process of orientation to the Christian life, we had set up a program, a curriculum, if you will. We have a curriculum for learning, for discipleship, for learning. And in this season, in the season prior to Lent, after the birth of Jesus and the coming of the star and the coming of the Magi from the Far East, was a season in which we celebrate seeing new things. New discoveries, epiphanies. Today, partly in the guidance from my devotional book on grief, which I have been reading since my mom died back in the spring, they talked about in there that when people are thrown into experiences of extreme pain or of unbelievable confusion, that we discover, here it is, there's the Epiphany word, we discover strengths we never knew we had. Now think about that. Strengths that we didn't know we had. We're carrying them around with us, but we didn't know. We didn't have any idea. I don't really know anything about it, but I read all the time about soldiers in battle who find the strength to go carry their comrades wounded and carry them back. The person that received the Medal of Honor 2 years ago had carried 7 of his friends to safety, even after being wounded himself. A strength we didn't know. Now, it's one thing to learn something out there, to have an epiphany about the way the world works or something like that. But to have an epiphany, to have a discovery about a strength that is within you, I didn't know I had it in me. I didn't know that I had it in me. I didn't. The writer of the grief meditation devotional book talks about how life can throw you into circumstances that you never imagined you would be in, and when you thought about what would happen if ever I was there, you would think I would just not survive. When I was 20 or so, my older brother and his girlfriend and I decided that we were going to take our rubber raft and we were going to push out into the Delaware River. We were very familiar with that part of the river, but the river was really in flood stage, and it wasn't exactly a good idea, but we were experienced on the river. We knew, I've been up and down that section of the river 100 times. And so we were in this rubber raft. We were moving along quite swiftly, and there was an inlet where we could cut in. Because the river was flooding, there wasn't normally water going down that way, but we chose that because it kept us out of the main current somewhat. And besides, we were trying to get onto that shore. So we went into the inlet like that, and you couldn't see around the bend in that water inlet. But when we got all the way in and we looked ahead, here was a scene we never imagined. And we're totally unprepared for. A tree had fallen, a tree this big had fallen all the way across from shore to shore. And it was this far off the water. You could just see some light underneath it, but not nearly enough room for our rubber raft, which had a side on it this big. We were headed for disaster. Just complete disaster. It was freezing cold. We were fully dressed. The river was flooding, and we were about to get scraped off our boat. There was nothing to do but to panic, and panic just sit there. Jumping into the water wasn't going to help. There was no way we could get over the log. We just tried to stay far enough away so we didn't get our heads hit or something like that. And sure enough, the boat came slamming into the tree and sent the rubber boat underwater with us. Into the water we went. I was in the front of the boat, and I had in my hand the rope, the pull rope for the front of the boat, and as I went underneath and I came up, the rope was wrapped around my neck from the boat, and I was under the water. And the water was freezing cold. It's the kind of thing that if I had thought ahead of time about it, I would have thought, I don't have the strength or the capacity to do anything in that environment. But I found in myself I don't, whether it's adrenaline or whether it's just sheer threat of death. I managed to get the rope. The boat now was pulling on me, and I managed to get the rope off of my neck, and I managed then to swim to the top. I took a moment to look around for my brother and his girlfriend, but I didn't see either of them, and then I began to swim toward the shore. I didn't think I could do it. But I found a strength in me. This is it, right? This is what it's the only purpose for getting into this story, is to talk about finding a strength in ourselves that we didn't know was there. Epiphany. We managed to get to the shore. I managed to get to the shore. It was a difficult extraction because the water was going by so fast, but we did get out. We didn't keep the boat. The boat was gone. We find a strength in us. Terrible things happen. Things we never wanted to have happen. Things that in our naivete we live and say can never happen to me, but they do happen to us. And then we think, oh, if that happened to me, I would just die. But we don't. We don't. We find a strength in us. And sometimes we don't find it right away. And there's some people who have experienced that both in an instantaneous moment, like in my situation, or in coping with a longer-term experience, like the death of someone that you depend upon and launches you into a completely out of your comfort zone kind of living. Then it takes weeks and sometimes months to get on your feet, but you discover in yourself skills you never knew you had, the ability to learn that you never thought you would ever learn, coping emotionally in life with things you never were asked to cope with on your own before, and yet you do. You do. Life can hollow you out. Things that you have been afraid of and have avoided all of your life, and happy to have avoided them, come crashing into your world. And you think, I can't deal with this. But you can. So, to the pastor's chat, are you finding strength you didn't know you had? Could add it to the quest for our education and for our learning, to our epiphany, for being educated, for what better way to be educated, or what more exciting thing to be educated about than to learn something about ourselves that we didn't know we had. Learning to paint, learning to write, learning to speak, exploring those kinds of things, sometimes by choice, sometimes pushed into them without any choice. But nevertheless, discoveries about ourselves, this too is part of the learning in Epiphany. It's not always about discovering things about God. It's sometimes discovering things about us. And I would even say that this inner strength that we discover often in Christian discipleship, people have said, this is God in me. This is discovering the presence of God in myself. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Sometimes by example. You see Jesus' power of love and forgiveness and mercy. It strengthens us because he goes ahead of us. He's done it. And so we know there may be some of that in us too. Groundhog Day is a good day to appear in the middle of Epiphany, because whatever the prognostications of the groundhog are, it's interesting that the message can be 6 more weeks of the same, or 6 6 more weeks of the same. 6 more weeks of winter, or spring has already begun. 6 more weeks of the same, or is today the day where the lever reaches its critical point and begins to tip towards spring? I was noticing the other evening that 5:15, 15 minutes after 5 o'clock, it wasn't dark. It's been creeping up on us, this change. Is it going to remain the same? Will you always know now about yourself what you always know, or will you find out things you never knew, capacities, strengths that you never knew you had? Now, maybe you didn't want them. Maybe grief brings upon you the need to do something that you always liked for others to do for you. I'm not saying that these strengths are always things that we yearn for, but there is this reality, this epiphany reality, which is we can do more. And as we get to know ourselves and life puts the crucible on us, we discover things about ourselves that we did not know were true. When people come to talk to the pastor, this one in particular, I'm aware that one of the things that happens sometimes in really honest and open conversations is that when people come into the office and we talk, they have one set of thoughts about themselves and limitations, usually fears or worries, deep anxieties. And then sometimes through talking about it, through them talking about it and being guided to see themselves a little differently, when they leave my office, they are stronger people than they were. Not because of anything I did, but because of what they've discovered about themselves while they were in this conversation. Oh, yes, I see that. Or I would see a strength in them that they hadn't seen in themselves, and I name it. And I'm able to say from one human being to another, that's amazing that you could do that. And mean it. I'm not just talking about empty flattery. So, I want to invite you on this February 2nd, 2021, to think about things you've learned about yourself that you didn't know. Things that you didn't know. And if there isn't anything that you can name, then this is a great time to begin to discover. Maybe you're even doing things you didn't know you could do, but you didn't notice. So, I don't know. I saw the snow, the depth of the snow. I thought to myself, I can't shovel any of that snow. But I went out and took my time. And, sorry, yawn came late today. And I did more than I knew I could do. And I did not endanger myself. So on this Sunday, this day of Epiphany, I commend you to the journey to know yourself and to discover strengths in you that you didn't know you had. So that when I ask you, how are you doing, you might answer in surprising ways surprising even to you. So there we have it. I hope you're getting shoveled out and able to cope. The roads melted fairly quickly, and it appears as if tomorrow some of the patterns of our life will go back to normal, although we're all still COVID restricted. So our world is much smaller than it was. And so I pray for your blessings and for your safety and for the adventure of discovering things about yourself in this Epiphany season. God bless you, my friends. I'll talk to you tomorrow.